Okay, so picture this scenario, and it feels like a trap, honestly, when you really think about it. You are watching a live awards ceremony.
Right. High production value, all the cameras are rolling.
Exactly. Millions of people are watching at home, and two presenters are on stage, specifically two black actors, and they're presenting an award. And then suddenly, a voice just cuts through the entire room.
Someone from the audience.
Yeah, someone in the audience shouts a racial slur, the N-word.
Wow. Yeah, it's the kind of moment that just sucks the air right out of the room. It's shocking. It's violent, really.
Mhm.
And the tension is immediate.
It is. But then almost immediately, the script kind of flips. We find out the person shouting isn't a heckler in the traditional sense. It's a man with Tourette's syndrome. And suddenly, everyone just freezes. Because how you react to that depends entirely on which lens you're looking through.
Right. And usually when this happens, the world splits into two very distinct, very loud camps.
Yeah, on one side you have Camp A, and they say, hey, hold on a second. This is a medical condition. It is involuntary. It is literally not his fault. You can't blame him for a misfiring neuron.
And then on the exact opposite side, you have Camp B. And they say, look, I don't care why he said it. That is a racial slur. It is traumatizing. It's hate speech. And it caused real, tangible harm to the people standing on that stage.
And usually, honestly, that's where the conversation stops. It just hits a wall. It's a stalemate. Guilty or innocent, medical or social, you pick a side and you just yell at the other side.
Which gets us nowhere.
Right. So today, we are going to try to get past that binary. We're doing a deep dive into a framework that suggests, well, maybe both of these things can be true at once.
That's right. To do this, we are looking at the work of Dr. Shungu H. She's an inclusion psychologist and the creator of a model called the 6 Stages Framework.
Yeah, we've got her handbook, her specific analysis of this exact awards show incident, and her guide on building bridges of empathy. And her whole mission here is pretty fascinating. It's not about labeling people as, good or bad. It's about figuring out where we actually stand so we can move forward.
Which is surprisingly difficult to do when emotions are running this high. But if we want to really understand the intersection of neurology and racism, we have to look at the whole picture. We have to look at the neurology and we have to look at the sociology.
So let's unpack this. We have to start with the medical side, right? Because I think a lot of us think we know what Tourette's is, mostly from movies or comedy sketches. But that pop culture idea might not be totally accurate.
It definitely isn't.
Yeah.
So based on the source material covering the neurological and social architecture of coprolalia, let's just clear up the basics first. Tourette syndrome, or TS, is a neurodevelopmental condition.
And it starts early, right?
Yeah, it usually shows up in childhood, typically between ages 5 and 10. And it's characterized by tics, which can wax and wane over time.
And just to be totally clear for everyone listening, a tic isn't just a bad habit. It's not like biting your nails when you're nervous.
No, not at all. A tic is a sudden, rapid, recurrent, non-rhythmic motor movement or vocalization. The literature describes it as involuntary, or sometimes they use the word involuntary.
Involuntary. What does that mean exactly?
Think of it sort of like a sneeze or an intense itch that is just burning under your skin. You might be able to hold it back for a second, maybe suppress it briefly if you really focus, but the tension builds and builds until it absolutely has to come out. It is a physiological urge.
Okay, so that covers the motor tics, the blinking, the shrugging, maybe clearing your throat. But we're talking about shouting slurs. That feels very specific.
It is specific. That particular symptom is called coprolalia. It's the involuntary utterance of obscene or socially taboo words. But here is the first really surprising fact from the research. Despite what movies and TV might have you believe, this only affects a minority of people with Tourette's.
Really? Because if you watch TV, you'd think it's the main symptom. Like every character with Tourette's is just swearing constantly.
Right, that is the Hollywood effect. In reality, estimates are around 10 to 20% of people with Tourette's experience coprolalia. The vast majority never shout swear words. But for that 10 to 20%, it is absolutely devastating.
Devastating how? Just socially?
Socially and psychologically. Imagine having no filter on your intrusive thoughts. Or worse, having your brain latch onto the one thing you know you absolutely shouldn't say in a quiet room. The sources really emphasize that people with coprolalia suffer from immense shame. They often isolate themselves because they're terrified of being misunderstood as aggressive or rude.
So looking at our awards show scenario, the man shouting didn't wake up planning to ruin the night. He was likely terrified something exactly like this might happen, and his brain just betrayed him.
Precisely. From a purely medical standpoint, the intent to harm was likely zero. The neurological mechanism fired, and he couldn't stop it.
Okay, so if I'm in Camp A, it's a medical condition camp. I'm feeling pretty vindicated right about now. If it's a biological misfire, like a seizure, how can we call it racism? It feels like punishing someone for having epilepsy.
And that is exactly the wall we usually hit. That's the binary. But Dr. Shungu asks us to dig deeper here. She poses a very uncomfortable question. If the tic is just random neurological noise, why that word?
Yeah, why not toaster? Or purple? Or clouds?
Exactly. The brain doesn't hallucinate completely new words during a tic. It accesses a database that already exists inside the person's head. The source material explains that coprolalia tends to pull from emotionally charged or taboo language.
See, because those words have more, like, voltage in the brain.
In a way, yes. They're marked as off-limits, which ironically makes the brain fixate on them when it's misfiring.
Oh.
But here's where the neurology meets the sociology. And this is the part of Dr. Shungu's research that I think is the biggest light bulb moment of this whole deep dive. She proposes a thought experiment involving two people.
Oh, I read this part, the two people scenario. This really shifted my perspective on the whole innocent versus guilty debate.
It's so powerful. So imagine two individuals. Let's call them person A and person B. They both have Tourette's. They both have severe involuntary coprolalia. Their neurology is identical. They both have that burning itch to shout something shocking.
Okay. Identical brains, identical medical diagnosis.
But they live in different caves, different environments. Person A grew up in a household where the N-word was used. Maybe not even with hate, maybe just casually or in jokes. Or maybe they just consume media where that word is common. It is sitting on the shelf in their internal library.
In person B.
Person B has lived a life where they actively reject that language. They don't say it, they don't tolerate it around them, they don't listen to content that normalizes it. They have consciously scrubbed that specific sequence of sounds from their active vocabulary. They've done the work to ensure it's not in their daily rotation.
So stress hits. The bentic builds up. The itch needs to be scratched. What happens?
Person A shouts the slur. Person B shouts something else. Maybe a curse word, maybe religious profanity, maybe something sexually explicit. But they're much less likely to shout a racial slur, because the brain cannot grab a tool that isn't in the toolbox.
That is, whoa. So the impulse to shout is the disease. That's the medical part. But the word that gets shouted, that's culture.
Boom. That is the distinction. The tic is the mechanism. The slur is the content. Dr. Shungu's argument is that while the man at the awards show isn't responsible for the mechanism, he cannot stop the shout. He is part of a culture that put that word in his head to begin with.
That completely dismantles the binary. It isn't racism or Tourette's, it's racism and Tourette's.
It connects the neurology to the sociology perfectly. The tic is the vehicle, but the passenger is the slur. As Dr. Shungu puts it, the content is shaped by what the person has normalized in their own environment.
So, going back to that award ceremony, when people say it's not his fault, they're talking about the mechanism. But when people say that's racist, they're reacting to the content and the culture that put that content in the brain to begin with.
And Dr. Shungu argues we have to hold both of those truths at the same time. We can't use the medical diagnosis to just erase the impact of the racism. And that brings us to the second half of the problem, the impact. Because while we're busy debating a shouter's neurology, what about the people on stage?
Right, the two black actors.
Exactly. They are standing there, doing their job, celebrating their peers, and they are assaulted by a word that carries centuries of violence. Does the fact that the shouter has a medical condition make that word hurt any less?
I mean, logically, maybe later, once you know the context. But emotionally, viscerally, in that split second, probably not.
The sources argue it doesn't. The trauma response is triggered by the word itself. It is an act of verbal violence, regardless of the intent behind it. And this is where institutions usually completely fail. Well, look at how the award show handled it. Dr. Shungu points out that their response was a classic example of what she calls the cave of comfort.
Let's talk about these caves, because this is a core part of her 6 stages framework, right?
Yes. The 6 stages framework, or SSF, is a developmental roadmap. The idea isn't to label someone permanently as a bad person, but to name where we are so we can move. It's a continuum that ranges from negative to positive.
Give me the extremes. What's the bottom of the barrel here?
At the very bottom, you have stage -6, extremist leadership.
Yeah.
That's the open promotion of hatred, supremacy, deliberate harm. Thankfully, most mainstream organizations aren't sitting there.
And the top.
Positive 6 is transformational leader. That's where equity and justice are just embedded into everything you do. It's automatic. It's baked into the culture.
So where was the awards show in this framework?
Well, let's look at their actions. When the incident happened, the production team edited out the slur for the later broadcast. They tried to just erase it, and their apology was very soft, kind of a sorry for the disruption and sorry if anyone was offended vibe.
Oh, the classic non-apology. I'm sorry you feel that way.
Exactly. Dr. Shungu categorizes this as stage -2, defensive and minimizing, or possibly even stage -1, unaware or resistant.
Why is that defensive, though? I mean, they did apologize, didn't they?
Did they apologize for the racism or
Uh,
for the noise? See, they prioritized the comfort of the institution. By editing it out and offering a vague apology, they protected the vulnerable person, the man with Tourette's, because that was the easier path. It allowed them to avoid the much more uncomfortable conversation about racism.
So they basically used the disability as a shield to avoid dealing with the race issue.
Yes, they retreated into the cave of comfort. They centered their own comfort rather than the harm done to the black guests.
It's wild how we do that. We pit one marginalized group against another. Like, there's only enough empathy in the pot for one person. If we have empathy for the man with Tourette's, well, then we just have to ignore the black actors.
That's a great way to put it. And Dr. Shungu says we have to stop doing that. We need a both-and approach.
So let's play consultant here for a second. If you were advising this awards show and you wanted to get them out of the cave and up to, say, stage +2, which is reflective and accountable, what does that press release actually look like?
It has to happen in two distinct parts. First, you acknowledge the medical reality. You say, we acknowledge that this was an involuntary portitic linked to a medical condition. You don't demonize the man.
Okay, that's the both. What's the and?
The and is a. We acknowledge that the word used was a racial slur with a history of violence and that this caused real harm to our black colleagues and guests.
That feels, I don't know, fuller. It's not just, oops, an accident happened. It's an accident happened and that accident was racist and we actually need to deal with that.
Exactly. It validates the neurological reality without dismissing the social harm. A stage +2 apology names the specific harm, which is racism, rather than just vaguely apologizing for a quote-unquote disruption.
And then what? Is just an apology? Is that it?
No, then you move to action. Dr. Shungu suggests a partnership model. Imagine if the awards organization had partnered with both Tourette's advocacy groups and anti-racism organizations to craft their response.
Man, that would be a power move.
It really would. It would demonstrate that they understand the complexity of the situation. Instead of pitting disability rights against anti-racism, you bring them together to educate the public. You explain coprolalia so people understand the man, and D, you explain why racial slurs are so damaging that we need to actively work to remove them from our cultural caves so people understand the society.
That's the building bridges part of her title.
Yes, it is about connecting across differences, but you can't build a bridge if you deny that the river exists. You have to acknowledge the messy reality first.
You know, what I really appreciate about this framework is that it doesn't let anyone off the hook, but it also doesn't condemn anyone to the trash heap forever. It says, okay, you reacted poorly. You are in stage -2. Now, how do we get to stage +1?
Right. It's a growth mindset applied to equity. Dr. Shungu says, we can't move if we don't know where we are. If you deny you're in a cave, you're never going to walk out of it.
So let's bring this home to the listener because, I mean, most of you listening aren't running major televised award shows. But we all deal with these conflicts. We all have that internal library you mentioned earlier.
We do, every single one of us. And the source material offers some really provocative questions for personal reflection that apply to everyone.
Yeah, these really stood out to me. The first one is a total gut check. When you first heard the story, who did you feel protective of first?
It's a very revealing question. Did your empathy instinctually flow to the man with a disability? Or to the black people targeted by the slur?
And I'm guessing there's no right answer there, but the answer tells you something about your own cave.
It reveals your bias. If you immediately thought, oh, people are being too sensitive, he has a disease, well, you might be prioritizing your own comfort with the status quo. If you thought he needs to be kicked out immediately, no excuses, you might be missing the nuance of the disability. The goal is to recognize that instinct and then broaden it to include both.
And the second question hits even closer to home, I think. What racial language or jokes exist in your environment that you filter out but which still live in your internal library.
That goes right back to the person A versus person B thought experiment. We all have an internal library. Maybe it's, I don't know, lyrics you sang along to 10 years ago. Maybe it's a joke your uncle tells at Thanksgiving that you just awkwardly laugh at.
It makes you realize that not being racist isn't just about what you say out loud on purpose. It's about what you allow to exist in your orbit.
Precisely. The question isn't just, are you a good person? The question is, what content is available to your brain in a moment of crisis? If you have a bad day, or a brain injury, or just a severe moment of weakness, what comes out?
That's kind of scary to admit. We all like to think we're the good ones, you know?
Right. But the 6 stages framework isn't about perfection. It's about movement. It's about realizing, oh, I have some books on my shelf I really need to throw away.
And if you are in a leadership position, the question becomes, where is my organization on this ladder? Are we minimizing harm to stay comfortable? Or are we building the capacity to hold complex, uncomfortable truths?
It's about moving from either or to both and. We can have compassion for the neurological reality of Tourette's and demand accountability for the social reality of racism. We don't have to choose. In fact, true inclusion demands that we don't choose.
It seems like the core lesson here is to just slow down. The internet wants us to react in, like, 5 seconds.
Yeah.
But this framework says stop. Look at the neurology. Look at the sociology. Can you hold both?
Accountability without scapegoating. Empathy without erasing impact. That's the mantra.
It's a high bar. It really is. But it feels like the only way we actually get anywhere. Otherwise, we're just shouting at each other from our separate camps forever.
And we stay in our caves. And nothing actually changes.
Well, I think that is plenty for us to chew on today. It's not often we get a framework that applies to brain chemistry, PR disasters, and personal growth all at the exact same time.
It's a universal tool, whether you're a CEO managing a crisis or just someone trying to be a decent human being in the world.
So for you listening, next time you see a headline that makes you want to pick a side instantly, maybe just pause. Ask yourself where you are in that 6 stages ladder. Are you minimizing? Are you defending? Or are you building a bridge?
Keep checking that internal library.
Thanks for diving in with us on this one.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Keep building those bridges of empathy.